The Berlin City Models exhibition, hosted by the Senate Department for Urban Development, Building and Housing in the Atrium at Köllnischer Park, is one of my favorite places to take guests during a city tour. It offers a fantastic overview of Berlin's development, particularly highlighting the changes of the past 30 years. Initially, I considered doing a live stream, but given the potential issues with sound and picture quality, I opted instead to walk through the exhibition while filming, using a pointer to highlight key details and commenting on what came to mind. Of course, there is much more to say about Berlin's urban transformation, and I appreciate your understanding if there are occasional inaccuracies. As you enter the exhibition, you step into a large room where your eyes are immediately drawn to the most impressive model at the far end. This model represents Berlin on a 1:1000 scale, measuring 8 meters or 26 feet wide and 5 meters or 16 feet high, which translates to 8 kilometers or 5 miles east-west and 5 kilometers or 3.1 miles north-south, a mere 5% of the entire city. To depict all of Berlin at this scale, the model would need to be a staggering 45 meters or 148 feet wide and 38 meters or 125 feet high, reflecting the city's maximum dimensions. Below this model, there is another one at a 1:500 scale, which provides a more detailed view of Berlin's historic city centre. This is where you can truly appreciate the dramatic changes that have taken place over the past 25 to 30 years. The model uses color coding to distinguish buildings. White buildings represent the existing buildings in 1989, before the reunification of Germany and before Berlin became one city again. Brown buildings were built after reunification from the 1990s onward or are under construction, and some are still in the planning phase. So if you look closely, you'll notice that there are now more brown buildings than white ones, meaning that over 50% of the city centre's buildings are new. To the right, you'll find a GDR-era model that represents Berlin's historic centre, which became part of East Berlin after the city's division, highlighting buildings constructed there after World War II. To the left, there's a tactile model designed for the visually impaired, allowing them to explore the city's layout by touch. Now we move down and see a smaller tactile map in front of us, representing Berlin as a whole. Here, you can see a dotted line winding its way up, back and forth, then up and down again. This line represents the former Berlin Wall, which once encircled West Berlin. The left side of the map inside the circled line shows former West Berlin, while the right side represents former East Berlin. The large model we are about to see next roughly represents this area in the center, just a small section of the entire city. Next, we pass the tactile model, but we won't stay here for long. There is also an audio guide available, which is why it's called the Talking Tactile Model of Berlin. Now let's take a closer look at the large city model itself. At the forefront, you can clearly see the Tiergarten area, Berlin's vast central park, with the Victory Column at its center. This area extends toward the Brandenburg Gate, which once marked the city's western boundary. The Tiergarten was originally a hunting ground for the Prussian electors and kings. It remained outside the city limits until the 18th century, when it was transformed into a landscape park. To the left, on the model's extreme edge, are Ernst Reuter Square and the buildings of the Technical University. Moving down, you can spot the Kaiser Wilhelm Gedächtniskirche, the Emperor William Memorial Church, located next to Kurfürstendamm, Berlin's main shopping boulevard. North of it is the Zoological Garden. Returning to the Victory Column and Brandenburg Gate, you'll notice a semicircular pattern of yellow dots leading upwards along the canal. This marks the northern section of the former Berlin Wall's path. Southward from the Brandenburg Gate, the wall's route continued towards Potsdamer and Leipziger Platz, the octagonal square, then further east towards the Checkpoint Charlie area, which was here, and eventually toward Oberbaum Bridge, the former eastern boundary of Berlin with the East Side Gallery. From the Brandenburg Gate, once the main entrance to Berlin, the Grand Boulevard Unter den Linden leads into the city centre and the historic core of Berlin. Along this boulevard, you'll find the Forum Fridericianum, home to the State Opera House, the Old Royal Library, Humboldt University, and St. Hedwig's Cathedral. A little further south is Gendarmenmarkt, supposed to be Berlin's most beautiful square, and beyond that to the right, the city castle and the founding site of Berlin, where the city's oldest church, St. Nicholas Church, is located, surrounded by the Nicholas Quarter. A little north of it, the St. Mary's Church, Berlin's second oldest church. Berlin was founded around 800 years ago as a twin city. On one side of the Spree stood Berlin, while on the river island lay Köln. The oldest church in Köln, the Petrikirche, once stood where the House of One is now being built. The model also illustrates Berlin's various historical city walls. The medieval city wall enclosed the old core, while, after the 30 Years' War, a fortification was built in the second half of the 17th century. The outlines of these fortifications can still be seen on the city model here. There where you can see the railway tracks, and then it came down here and again up over here. The course of the old fortifications can still be clearly seen in the cityscape today. If you watch my last video on Berlin's urban development up to 1840, you'll see historical city maps that help illustrate this more clearly. Of course, the television tower is visible, and we are currently in this building marked by the red dot, right next to the Märkisches Museum, one of the many Berlin museums. If you take a step back and look at the model from a greater distance, you can clearly see where the third city wall stood until 1868. As mentioned, the Brandenburg Gate once marked the western boundary of Berlin. From there, the city wall extended northward, then following the curved street that defined Berlin's northern limit. It continued downward, reaching Oberbaum Bridge, which marked the eastern boundary. Looking closely, you'll notice a faint line running at the bottom of the model, a bit hard to show. This is the subway, which follows the exact path where the city wall once stood. Several subway stations still bear the names of former city gates, such as Schlesisches Tor, Hallesches Tor, and Cottbusser Tor. You can also observe Berlin's urban development, which began in the mid-19th century. North of the last city wall lies Prenzlauer Berg, a neighborhood situated slightly higher than Old Berlin. Before construction began, the area was home to numerous windmills. A plan developed by James Hobrecht in 1862 envisioned a network of arterial roads extending out from Berlin, with residential areas filling the spaces in between. As a result, private companies constructed the so-called tenement barracks, densely packed tenement buildings, characterized by narrow facades and multiple small courtyards. The countless backyards of this former working-class neighborhood are clearly visible on the model. Similar boroughs featuring these so-called tenement barracks, forming a belt of dense housing around Old Berlin, include Wedding, Friedrichshain, Neukölln, and Kreuzberg. However, I will explore this topic in more detail in an upcoming video about housing development in Berlin during the 1920s. Looking back from the Brandenburg Gate northwest, you'll also notice Europa City, a newly developed area, still under construction when this model was last updated. Many of these buildings shouldn't be white anymore, since they have now been completed, particularly around the main train station. The Federal Chancellery, as well as the office buildings for the Bundestag, surrounding the Reichstag, are also visible. One striking feature here is the Band des Bundes, a series of government buildings spanning both sides of the Spree River, symbolically linking former East and West like a belt buckle, with the main train station serving as a connecting point. What else can we discover? Looking towards Oberbaumbrücke, you'll find the Anschutzreal, including the Uber Arena, formerly Mercedes-Benz Arena. The American company developed this area into an entertainment complex, featuring hotels, a large event hall for 17,000 visitors, a smaller adjacent venue, and a shopping mall. The entire area is now fully built up, meaning it should no longer appear in white color on the model. Okay, this was a brief introduction to the large-scale Berlin City model, which provides an exceptional overview of urban development. If you're interested in learning more, I recommend watching my other videos, as Berlin's history up to 1840, tracing the city's early expansion, and Europa City, new buildings in the center of Berlin. In the next video, I will explore the East German era city model, which provides a fascinating insight into East Berlin's urban planning during the socialist period. If you'd like to support my work, please subscribe to my channel, share, and like the video. Thank you, and see you in the next one.